What if I told you there was evidence of an advanced civilization right here in North America, thousands of years before the Mayans or the Aztecs? You might think I'm crazy, but there is actually a place that fits this description. It's called Watson Break, and it just might be America's oldest lost civilization. So let's explore. If you like mysteries and archaeology, in 2008, researchers discovered a large mound of earthworks, measuring roughly 40 meters high and 100 meters wide. They've also uncovered evidence of sophisticated agricultural practices, suggesting that the inhabitants of Watson Break were not simply nomadic hunter-gatherers. Instead, they were likely a settled people who lived in the area for most of the year and relied on farming to sustain themselves. Well, one reason is that they didn't leave behind any written records that could shed light on their culture and way of life. In fact, it was only in the 1990s that archaeologists began excavating the site. This is late in the grand scheme of things, considering that other ancient sites in North America, such as Mesa Verde, have been studied for over 100 years. In 2013, for example, they found a burial mound that contained the remains of a man, woman, and child. Some researchers believe that the people who lived at Watson Break may have had contact with the ancient Egyptians and Mesoamericans. This is based on the fact that the inhabitants of Watson Break built pyramids, which are also found in Egypt and Mesoamerica. Furthermore, some of the artifacts found at Watson Break bear a striking resemblance to artifacts found in Egypt and Mesoamerica. If further evidence of contact between these cultures can be found, it would revolutionize our understanding of ancient history. The discovery of burials at the site is important because it can provide insights into the religious beliefs of the ancient inhabitants. They had a deep understanding of mathematics and engineering, as evidenced by the construction of their pyramids. They also had a knowledge of agriculture and the ability to sustain themselves through farming. Or do you think that it's nothing more than a collection of burial mounds and pyramids? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe and check out my other videos about ancient civilizations. Thanks for watching. However, we still know very little about their culture and way of life. The discovery of a burial mound containing the remains of a man, woman, and child is an important step towards learning more about the religious beliefs of the ancient inhabitants. However, more work is needed to fully understand the significance of the burial mound. Unfortunately, due to budget constraints, the excavation of the burial mound was not extensive and many questions remain unanswered. If evidence of contact with the ancient Egyptians and Mesoamericans can be found, it would provide an incredible amount of information about the ancient world. Overall, the Watson Break site is a fascinating and mysterious place that has the potential to teach us a great deal about the earliest inhabitants of North America. With further excavation and study, we may never know everything about this ancient civilization, but hopefully we can learn more about their culture and way of life. Nevertheless, it is hoped that future excavations will shed more light on the people who lived and died at Watson Break. Watson Break has only been studied for a few decades. We still have much to learn about this ancient civilization. Without written records, it's difficult to learn about the beliefs, customs, and achievements of any civilization. Compared to other archaeological sites in North America, Watson Break is relatively unknown. This is unfortunate, because it has the potential to teach us a great deal about the earliest inhabitants of North America. If given the necessary funding and attention, Watson Break could become one of the most important archaeological sites in the world. Additionally, Watson Break is located in an area that was once home to several different Native American tribes. Over the centuries, these tribes have either been forced to relocate or assimilated into mainstream society. As a result, there is very little left of Watson Break today, except for a few mounds and the memories of those who once lived there. Analysis of the plant remains found at the site has shown that the inhabitants of Watson Brake grew a variety of crops, including corn, squash, sunflower, and beans. These plants were brought to North America around 2000 BCE, and their presence at Watson Brake suggests that the people who lived there were among the first in the region to adopt agriculture as a way of life. This is important because the adoption of agriculture is considered to be one of the most significant events in human history. It allowed for the development of more complex societies and eventually led to the rise of civilization as we know it. What's remarkable about this mound is that it bears a striking resemblance to the pyramids found in Mesoamerica. No written records have been found at the site, and there is still debate over what language the inhabitants of Watson Brake spoke, or whether they even had a written language of their own. What's more, despite the fact that archaeologists have been excavating the site since the 1990s, they've only been able to explore a small portion of it. The vast majority of Watson Brake remains unexcavated, meaning that there is still a lot that we don't know about this ancient civilization. However, experts have not yet been able to reach a consensus on whether it should be classified as a true pyramid. Some argue that it isn't, because it doesn't meet the definition of a pyramid, but others say that it is clear that the builders of Watson Brake were inspired by the Mesoamerican pyramids. No matter what you call it, though it's clear that the people who built it had a sophisticated understanding of mathematics and engineering, given the fact that they were able to create such a structure without the use of modern tools, then you know how lucky we are to live in an age where we can use things like carbon dating and DNA analysis to finally get answers to some of those burning questions that have kept us up at night for centuries. That's definitely the case when it comes to this ancient site located in Louisiana, USA. They were able to make this determination by analyzing charcoal samples found at the site using radiocarbon dating. This is a technique used to date organic materials such as wood or bone by measuring the amount of radioactive carbon isotopes remaining. But what they discovered in Watson Brake was even more surprising. They realized that people had lived there much longer than previously thought. After further excavation and analysis, scientists learned that the settlement had been occupied intermittently from around 1200 BCE to 700 CE, making it nearly 2,500 years old. To put this into context, this would have been around the same time that the ancient civilizations of Greece and Rome were just beginning to emerge in Europe. It's called Watson Brake, and it just might be home to the oldest pyramid in North America. Take King Tut's tomb, for example. We now know that he died at the young age of 19 from injuries sustained from a chariot accident, and the mystery of who killed Abraham Lincoln has been solved by some scholars thanks to a new analysis of historical records and forensic evidence. But no matter how helpful these scientific advances can be, sometimes they can also be really frustrating. Just ask anyone who's watched the Netflix series, The Mystery of Marilyn Monroe, which uses cutting-edge technology to try to figure out who was responsible for the death of the famous Hollywood starlet. And yet even with all this technology, the question of what really happened is still up in the air. There are other times where modern science and technology can help us learn more about our past, but only if we're willing to listen to what it's telling us. The first time archaeologists excavated the site, in the 1990s, they uncovered evidence of human habitation dating back over 2,000 years. But there's one part of Watson Brake that stands out above the rest. In addition to this mysterious earthwork, archaeologists have also found a variety of artifacts at Watson Brake, including pottery shards, stone tools, and animal bones. But despite all of this evidence, we still don't know much about the people who lived at Watson Brake. So why is it that we know so little about them? Another reason why we know so little about Watson Brake is that it was undiscovered until relatively recently. Finally, perhaps the biggest reason why we know so little about Watson Break is that the site has not received the funding and attention that it deserves. In recent years, archaeologists have made a number of fascinating discoveries at Watson Break. One of the most exciting aspects of the Watson Break site is the possibility that it may contain evidence of contact between the ancient inhabitants and other cultures. The ancient inhabitants of Watson Break were clearly a sophisticated people. The possibility of contact between the ancient inhabitants of Watson Break and other cultures is also an exciting line of inquiry that could revolutionize our understanding of ancient history. So what do you think? Do you find the Watson Break site to be mysterious and intriguing?